Smoke from Canada's record-setting start to the wildfire season is covering cities across this country and the U.S., setting dangerous air quality ratings, canceling summer activities, and even forcing the Big Apple to hand out N95 masks just to help New Yorkers walk down the street. Right now in Canada, there are 503 active wildfires, and more than half of those are burning out of control. Or just under, half of those are burning out of control. There are thousands of international boots as well on the ground, with allies from France to South Africa, to Australia, sending firefighters to battle these places. From the U.S., there are more than 1,500 American firefighters, incident managers, and support staff here. David Cohen is the U.S. ambassador to Canada. Hi, Ambassador Cohen. Good to see you as always.
It is good to see you, and a special appearance on your last show of the season. I'm honored.
Well, that's very kind of you. I appreciate you making the time for this, as always. I wanted to start off on the subject of what's behind us and what's certainly traveled not only around cities here in Canada, but down south of the border to much of the Midwest. I opened the New York Times this morning, for example. Big top headline was about smoke coming back to New York City from the wildfires in Canada. How big of a deal is this?
Well, remember, not to exaggerate this even further, but the smoke has also reached Europe. So it's now this wildland fire smoke is literally a global problem. So, you know, for me, it's just a reminder of how powerful Mother Nature is. I mean, we think as human beings, we control our destiny in the world. We don't have a chance against Mother Nature, whether it's wildland fires or earthquakes or hurricanes. So it's just a lesson, and it's also a lesson about the adverse impacts of climate change, a real life lesson. And I don't think this is going away soon, and I don't think this is the only year we're going to experience these problems. And it is a serious problem, and one that takes a really coordinated action. Right now, we're all focused on fighting the wildland fires, which is right. We want to save lives. We want to save as much property as possible. But we should turn our attention through research, development, satellite imagery, technology, as to how we might prevent wildland fires in the future, or at least prevent the intensity of those fires.
And when you talk about that, and you mentioned the word coordination, because you signed an MOU with, for example, Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, kind of in dealing with the acute impacts of things right now and the deployment of resources to fight those fires. But when you do look ahead to the long term, is there a coordinated way in which you think our two countries could work to prevent this from happening in the first place?
So the answer is definitely. And actually, as Minister Wilkinson pointed out, we were joined, by the way, by Minister Blair. So as the two right ministers for Canada were present for this. But as Minister Wilkinson pointed out, the arrangement that we signed does deal with coordination of firefighters, equipment, how we work together to fight fires. But the more exciting part of the arrangement are the elements of the arrangement about coordination and cooperation for R&D, for technology sharing, for exploring how we work to prevent wildland fires in the future, and how we work to use technology to potentially reduce the intensity of those fires. So that's all rolled into this arrangement that creates a true collaborative relationship around wildland fire prevention and fighting.
Let me ask you, from a kind of behind-the-scenes perspective, I'm just curious, is that something that had been in the works for a long time, or did the events of this year and the unprecedented nature of how fast and furious this season happened as early as it did impart a bit of an expedited nature to what's happening? Like, was that the impetus?
So I think the answer is both. This is something that's been under discussion for quite a while. It is actually something we discussed in the preparation for the President's visit to Canada. It was one of the topics we were discussing. We were almost ready to announce it in connection with the visit, but we had some details to work out, some final details to work out, so it ended up not being discussed as part of the visit. But we were 90% of the way there. We know this is something that needs to be coordinated. Again, remember, this is not our first time at this rodeo for either country. when we talk about what's happening with this particular set of wildland fires, I always remind people today we now have for the United States we have more than 18,000 firefighters who have been engaged since the inception of this. But I remember this is reciprocal, because only 2 years ago, when the United States had wildland fires out of control in the northwestern part of the country, it was Canada that stepped up with firefighter support to help us get control of those fires. So this is a well-known area where Canada and the United States share a fear, a concern in the relationship, and it's out of that relationship that the work on this started probably a couple of years ago.
You spoke, though, about how also, and this is something we've heard from our government here, because of climate change and the effects of climate change, this could be something we deal with more frequency in the future. And it's in that vein I wanted to ask, last time we were here, we talked about the White House's own climate plan, in some of the challenges that its critics have posed about some of the decisions that the president has made. And you talked about how the U.S. kind of wants to have it both ways, wants to be able to pursue, in light of the security issues in the world right now, the development of fossil fuels so long as they are needed and necessary, at the same time as treating climate change as an existential threat. Does what we're looking at behind us change that calculation for the U.S. at all?
I don't think it can change that calculation. I obviously remember your question, and I smile when I say this. I answered your question completely honestly, and we made a headline. And I think that says something about politics and media today, that you can't always flip a switch and do everything you want to do all at once. These are big, complicated problems, and we can't turn off all fossil fuels immediately. It can't be done. And so you have to figure out how to manage all of your priorities. Climate change is a critical priority. Energy security is a critical priority. But allowing our economy to operate, to grow, to allow jobs to grow, to not put millions of workers out of work, that's a big priority too. And so, yes, we'll push as hard as we can for alternative sources of fuel. We'll push as hard as we can for reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, and we'll push as hard as we can on making our fossil fuel energy consumption as clean as it can be, so that we all work together toward a net zero future as quickly as we can get there.
And I think in asking the question, I'm not trying to take away from the nuance of the issue, and I realize fully that it's
I wasn't saying you were doing anything wrong.
I'm just saying for our viewers too, right? Like it becomes a very polarizing issue, and I understand that there's nuance to it, and it's not black and white. But our political leaders often make statements that do appear to be black and white. For example, President Biden has said no more drilling in the 2020 campaign on federal land. Period. 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 He said it that unequivocally. And that has not transpired. So I think in light of what we're seeing out here, that's why I raised the question, right? I get that there's a big calculation to make, that there's the economy at stake, and there's international security at play as well. But we are feeling the impacts of the harmful effects of climate change so acutely at this moment that I wonder if politicians are pausing for a moment saying, maybe we do have to change something.
So look, the wildland fires are a really acute example of what happens with climate change. And I think it is helping elected officials get public support for some of the things that they want to do and that we need to do in this arena. But the United States and Canada are different. There's more public support for climate change initiatives in Canada than there is in the United States. And this might be catalyzing event for more people in the United States to understand the impacts that result from climate change. I jokingly said that the New York Post had a famous headline a couple of weeks ago.
Well, we all saw it,
Blame Canada.
Blame Canada.
I said it was a missed opportunity. The Washington Post headline should have been Blame Climate Change. That would have been helpful. It would have been true as opposed to the headline they used, and it would have been helpful in elevating the understanding of just what was causing these wildland fires.
Ambassador, before I let you go, I do want to switch gears and just ask you about one other subject, because it also involves both our countries. C-18, as the bill is known here, a bill that basically forces big social media companies like Meta and Google to pay companies like the one who owns this network in order to link to or preview their news content. That bill has now become law. Google just today announced that it would, as a result of that coming into effect in 6 months or so, ban Canadian news content from its search engine. There's a bipartisan group of senators that wrote the U.S. Trade Representative not long ago when this bill was making its way through Parliament and said, we're worried about this. We think it unfairly targets U.S. companies. Is that a concern that you share? So
obviously, C-18's been around for a long time, as you point out. I think the United States has been, it's been quite apparent that the United States was not interested in taking a position on this bill. It's been there for a long enough time. If we had a clear and a stated position on it, we would have said something about it. So I can't speak for the trade representative as to response to a particular letter, but you know, this is a complicated subject. Sorry to say that so often, but you only ask me about complicated subjects. There are arguments both ways on subjects like this, and this is one that, for now, the Office of Trade Representative has decided not to get involved in and not to intervene in.
So do I interpret from that we are not to anticipate a formal trade complaint, for example, under USMCA, or has that not been ruled out?
I don't want to predict that one way or another, because it's a hypothetical on a hypothetical, but I can answer that it wasn't accidental that the United States didn't take a position on C-18. It's not that the letter got lost in the mail. I mean, there was plenty of discussion, and there was just a decision that this was not something that we chose to intervene in.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Ambassador, thank you as always for your time. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and have a